Cafe in Port Allen. Today on Sports Shorts Daily, we're going to talk about 3 or 4 topics. One, LSU basketball giant game tonight at Auburn. The Tigers find themselves a 4-point underdog, even though they are undefeated on the season. Something's got to give. Auburn's an 11th ranked team. LSU's a top 20 team. So it's going to be a great matchup. Will Wade, Bruce Pearl, 2 coaches that have been talked about a lot over the last year or two because of off the field things, not so much on the court. But should be a good one, and I'll be there as well. So I'll have a report for you on Friday what that atmosphere is like. Looking forward to it. It'll be my first time at Auburn for a hoops game, supposedly one of the best atmospheres in all of the country. Is this the end of the college bowl system? What I mean is COVID going to change the landscape of what we know as college bowls moving forward? We'll talk about that, as currently, I believe, Tommy, there are 80-something teams that qualify for a bowl at the moment. There'll still be quote-unquote bowls, but will it change in the future? And COVID has played havoc the last 2 years on bowls. Sponsors are losing money. Cities are losing money. And there's too many bowls as it is. So we'll talk about that. The John Madden passed away at the age of 85, an absolute legend. And especially if you're an older person, if you're over the age of 40, if you're over the age of 30, really, John Madden was a giant part of your childhood, especially if you were a sports fan, whether it was a childhood or an adult. John Madden from the mid-'80s all the way to the mid-2000s was a giant force in the game of pro football. And, of course, if you're a gamer and you play all the video games, John Madden, you know him as being Madden NFL and all that stuff. But for 20, 30 years, he was the biggest football analyst in the world. We'll talk about John Madden and all that as he passed away at the age of 85. I'm trying to think what else we have on the docket here, TK. Also big news, right? LSU names Matt House the defensive coordinator. And so we finally have one coordinator down, one more to go for Brian Kelly's staff. House currently the linebacker coach at Kansas City. Tommy will have his opinion on that hire. Let's bring in Tommy right now from Court Street Cafe. TK, what was your reaction to Matt House? Not probably the worst kept secret for the last week.
Yeah, we've kind of been hearing about all that. And when you look at his resume, it speaks to itself. Tyrann Mathieu, former LSU Tiger, current Kansas City Chief, gave him a ringing endorsement. And here's the thing. When Brian Kelly got hired and 2-3 days later, he didn't have an offensive or defensive coordinator, a lot of LSU fans, their hair got on fire. Well, goes back to what you've always said, Ronnie. Let it play out. On paper, this looks to be an excellent hire. He's been in the SEC at Kentucky, where he had to play Florida and Georgia every year and all that good stuff. So, it's on paper. It's a very, very good hire. He will not start doing anything for LSU until the Chiefs season ends, whenever that may be. But certainly they can tell recruits, hey, we got a guy that's got a Super Bowl ring. He's got people in the NFL that he knows that he can help get you to the league. And, by the way, he's been in the SEC, among many other places. I read the resume that Michael Barnett sent out to everybody. It's quite impressive. And then, I think where LSU fans can hang their hat is Tyrann Mathieu, who's on the defense in Kansas City, gives him a ringing endorsement as a teacher of football and his ability to recruit and how it's going to be big time for LSU. So I think it's very good situation for LSU.
The Matt House hire, hey, did they go into detail? I didn't see the release. Did they go into detail or anything about he's going to stay on with the Chiefs to the end of the year?
Well, I just said he won't come to LSU till the Chiefs season ends.
Right. So, that's pretty standard, in the NFL, unless you're named a head coach. If you're a coordinator, an assistant, or something like that, 90% of the time they stay with the NFL team until the season's over with. And fortunately for LSU, good and bad, right? The Chiefs are a team that may be in the Super Bowl. I mean, Matt House may not be in Baton Rouge till middle of February.
But see, I don't know if he can get on the phone with recruits. I mean, at the very least, the LSU current coaches can say, hey, that's our guy coming in. Or if they're recruiting a linebacker or a cornerback, that's our guy coming in. Go read his resume. I don't know if they can have contact or not. I'm not sure of that.
Yeah, I mean the NCAA's got some goofy rules and stuff like that, so it wouldn't shock me. But I would think that he could pull double duty and do that. Now the offensive coordinator, that shoe has yet to drop, and we keep hearing the offensive coordinator for Cincinnati, for the Bearcats, not the Bengals, is expected to be the LSU offensive coordinator. Here's a unique wrinkle though. What happens if what's kind of, in the coaching circle behind the scenes being talked about, what if Day at Ohio State ends up being the next Chicago Bears coach, which is gaining momentum and not a crazy possibility? If Ryan Day ends up being the Chicago Bears coach, who they have not fired their coach, but it's expected they will, then a giant opening happens in Ohio, at Ohio State. Well, Luke Fickell right there in Cincinnati makes a lot of sense to be the next head coach at Ohio State if that job opens up. If that job opens up, the offensive coordinator at Cincinnati currently, who's supposed to be maybe coming to LSU, would be a lead candidate to either take the job at Cincinnati or possibly go with Fickell to Ohio State, because let's face it, Ohio State and LSU, that's lateral jobs in the big picture. So, all's not done yet on that deal.
Yeah, well, that's part of the coaching carousel that's still spinning in many regards around the country. And look, you got people, everybody's got a guy who gets on the phone and tests the level of interest and finds out what's going on, and maybe calls somebody and says, all right, if Ryan Day goes to the Bears, dear Ryan Day, don't do that, okay? See Urban Meyer example. But anyway, I guess it's up to him. But, yeah. A lot of stuff probably flying around with all of that, and I would hope, and I'm quite sure Brian Kelly has a plan B and a plan C if the Ben Brock thing doesn't work out.
Before we get down the line talking on some of the other topics, we're talking about LSU football for a minute. You talked to Mike Scarborough yesterday of TigerBait.com, and it's of his opinion that LSU will indeed play in the bowl game. Although, there are games and teams dropping like flies in this situation. As I look at, because it's literally an up-to-the-date situation. Today's game between SMU and Virginia, that's been canceled. Other games I'm looking here real quick. Monday's game, Boston College and East Carolina, that was canceled. NC State, who is scheduled to play next Tuesday, was scheduled to play Tuesday, was postponed. Now they're saying postponed, not canceled. Do you know if that's because they're trying to find a replacement?
Well, that game was yesterday. It was canceled several hours before kickoff, and NC State coach was very vocal and mad about. He thought he got lied to.
It was supposed to be UCLA.
Yeah, and UCLA, a couple of players, having a Twitter war. But yeah, that if you listen to NC State coach, it's kind of you kind of can go, hey, you might have a point here. And finally, Chip Kelly, the coach at UCLA, said, hey, we were following the rules, and that's what happened. So, it's a mess, and it's an hour by hour situation. You have some games scheduled today, and I guess you got to turn the TV on. If they kick it off, then they're playing. But I still maintain that I don't think LSU is going to play next Tuesday. Now, I said that a week ago. I'm going to stick with it, but the closer you get, one would think, well, no, they're going to play. But yesterday's game was canceled approximately 4 or 5 hours before the kickoff, so keep that in mind. It's tough, too? I mean, there's some LSU fans that are probably thinking, hey, I'm going to drive over next Tuesday morning, from Baton Rouge to Houston, 4 solid hours. And then, I'll get a room for after the game, whatever. Now they might be saying, well, do I really want to get in the car if at noon? It's an 8 o'clock kick. If at noon, are they going to cancel the game? And keep in mind, LSU basketball plays Kentucky at home at 6 o'clock. Maybe some people just say, hey, I'm going to go to the basketball game and we'll watch TV and see the LSU-Kansas State game.
I'll tell you, Tommy, it's not a bad idea, especially if LSU can win tonight. No question about it.
If LSU Hoops wins tonight, the PMAC next Tuesday
It'll be
It's probably
sold out.
already sold out. It's going to be like wall-to-wall people.
The interesting thing is that they just listed as postponed, not canceled, when it comes to the NC State game yesterday, the Holiday Bowl. And the only reason I say that is because maybe they put the word postponed because they're trying to find a replacement and move and play that game in a few days or something. Maybe NC State has said we'll stick around. I don't know. I feel bad for all those teams, and quite frankly, I feel like any bowl game that gets where the other team gets canceled or if there's a school out there, any school, doesn't matter who, I don't care if it's McNeese. If they're saying, "Hey, we'll line up and we'll be there tomorrow to play," then I think you owe it to the.
The only problem is they haven't been practicing. Kids have went home for the holidays, whatever. I mean, because there was talk.
It's a hard ask.
Of some like over there in Houston or somewhere, one of Sam Houston State, right, could play because they were nearby. But are your coaches around? Are your players around? Then you get into the health and safety of it. I mean, if you haven't done anything with football for 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. Do you all of a sudden, in 2 practices, can you be ready? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how sketchy that might be, but but you made the comment earlier. What's this going to do to the bowl games going forward? I would hope we're on the other side of this virus thing by next year, but maybe we're not. I ain't smart enough to know that. But I mean, this is it's throwing a lot of shade, pardon the pun, on the bowl games that aren't New Year's Day 6 and playoff games.
It seems as if no one gives a crap about playing in any of these bowl games unless it's like I said, a high-level bowl game, a New Year's Day 6 or a playoff game. And, quite frankly, I would think that the COVID situation for 2 years in a row now, Tommy, has forced there's a lot of bowls out there that have lost money. There's a lot of sports organizations, cities, communities that have taken it on the chin because of this COVID thing. And now some of them 2 years in a row, there's 5 bowls so far that have been canceled.
Well, and look at ESPN. I mean, they have this contract. They got just about all. I think there's 1 bowl on Fox. Everything else is on ESPN. Look at the money they're losing by not playing these games and not charging advertisers. Albeit 5 minor bowl games or second level bowl games, if you will, but still, we're talking a lot of money involved. Look at Memphis; they flew to Hawaii.
Stephen Miller's got sources like you, TK. Says I've got a good friend that lives out in San Diego that told him that UCLA was out at SeaWorld the day before the game. So that's not a team. If they're out at SeaWorld en masse, that's not a team that's doing all they can.
Well, one of the things that North Carolina State coach said was 100% of his players were vaccinated and had booster shots. So they were doing everything they could to ensure the ability to play the game. And apparently UCLA wasn't. And, it's a mess.
I don't know the answer to this one, Sydney. See, he says, what do they do with the money and the teams that travel to the game? Talking about the bowl payouts and all that. I have no idea because, the
travel is covered by the NCAA. The bowl team pays money out.
Are you sure of
but
that?
I think TV. Yeah, because remember when LSU went to the Peach Bowl that year? If you drove your car, the NCAA gave every player mileage versus if they flew, like if they met at the game. Now, of course, that was a few years back, so maybe it's changed. Good question by Sydney. I guess I'll try to get the answer to that, Sydney, and maybe relay that on Friday morning when we're back on.
Because here's the issue that the money, ticket sales, tickets have to go back to the people. So, if you bought a ticket to any of these games, you're going to be refunded.
Right.
I guess it's just like LSU football a couple of years ago. I guess you could check the box that says, I'll donate the ticket.
Or give me a free ticket to next year.
Realistic. That's not realistic. Maybe you have a few people that do it, but not enough to make a difference. So you're refunding all the money. If you have a sponsor, Walk-Ons, remember, for 3 years was a sponsor of the Independence Bowl, not any longer. But if you're a sponsor, you're paying to be the sponsor of that game and to be on ESPN and all that stuff. And if it doesn't happen, there's got to be some sort of, there's no way you're paying the full freight. Maybe you pay a portion because you got some marketing and value and whatnot leading up to the game, but the big sponsorship is that game itself. So I would imagine the sponsor doesn't owe all that money. That maybe half, maybe a quarter, maybe 2/3. I don't know.
Well,
so
do some of these bowls have insurance? I mean, we have to check with Buzzy Hydell.
Here's the thing:
maybe he insured the Sun Bowl.
Insurance is only as good as what you can get. What I mean by that is, like, for example, everybody throws around the word insurance. Well, the first time COVID happens last year, and all of a sudden people cash in these insurance policies. And by the way, multiple games last year, more than 5. Those insurance companies don't have to write you a policy for the next year. Matter of fact, I'm sure many of them didn't. And if there's any bowl games out there that got insurance last year, they probably all got insurance from the same company, and that company's probably out of business, Tommy. I mean, when I started the Jumbo Sports Network, I looked into rain-out insurance, okay, back in the late 90s, and because it was going to cost me, say, $15,000 a game to do a game on television, live TV back then. And I looked into insurance. The only thing I could find 25 years ago was Lloyd's of London. And when I called Lloyd's of London, I got a guy, Blumberg Insurance, to look into Lloyd's of London, the price came back. Basically, I was scheduled to do 5 or 6 games in year one, and the price was going to be the cost of one full game. It was going to cost me $15,000. To have insurance for 5 games. So basically a 5-for-1. So I'm like, well, at that point, I'll just roll the dice. I mean, I'm not going to have more than 1 game rolled out at the most. And so sometimes insurance isn't, 1, worth the cost. And 2, just because you have it one year doesn't mean you have it next year. It's just like your car insurance. You get in a bad accident, your price goes up or they drop your ass.
No, it's a complicated layer, but like I remember the first year the pandemic hit and Wimbledon canceled right away, and I read that they had insurance against any type of cancellation, and they actually made more money than they would have made if Wimbledon would have got played. So that's why they were quick to cancel back then. They weren't caught off guard as MLB and NFL and everybody else was. So again, I don't know the details of all that now, but you're right. Insurance, we all know what insurance is, and when you need it, you're glad you have it. And otherwise, you just pay that premium.
And what I'm getting at, Tommy, is just I think a lot of people may have been able to make money on insurance last year. I don't think you're making money on insurance this year because insurance companies are going, no, we're not going to cover you. Or if we are,
the premium's ridiculous. Or the premium's so high.
The premium's so high, it's not worth it. So, look, I feel bad for these kids, but the bottom line is this bowl system is junk. They need to redo it. Kids just don't care. I mean, everybody's opting out left and right. Look at Nevada. Nevada, hey, we made a bowl game. Great. If you're a gambler, it's the worst scenario because you have to really study up on Central Michigan versus Boise or whatever, right? To know what's going on, who's opting out, who's not playing, who's ineligible, who's affected by COVID. It's like flipping a coin on gambling. Nevada wound up playing the kid from St. Thomas More as a senior, the 6'9" Cox kid, hadn't played hardly any in his college career. He was the backup. Nevada's stud quarterback that threw for over 4,000 yards this year decided, you know what, I'm not playing in the bowl game. And Nevada got ran out of the gym, out of the building. It was so bad. And so the games aren't even good. So unless you're in the top 10 bowl games, I think the rest, man, needs to just go by the wayside.
Kind of like the Saints. You just had no shots.
No doubt about it. Saints were absolutely awful. Let's see what Craig Schilling says here. The Super Bowl has multiple insurance companies and policies for possible cancellation, G&L property, media liability, even can. So we know what Craig Schilling does for a living. It's clear. Yep. It's clear he's in the insurance business. Stephen Miller saying absolutely hard as hell with players being held out for COVID a few days before. On all these cancellations. All right, so TK, now with that said, as we're getting closer, next week's the game. You still thinking LSU? We're going to have a last minute?
I don't think that game's going to get played, but I could be wrong.
All right, let's talk about the game that we know is going to be played tonight. LSU and Auburn. Will Wade taking on Bruce Pearl. Tigers find themselves, even though they're undefeated, they find themselves a 4-point dog on the road. I'm not very optimistic on this one, Tommy, because LSU has lived a charmed life to this point. They've had many games where they've been down at halftime, down double digits in the first half, and have relied on these comebacks. Those were against lesser opponents. This is on the road in one of the toughest environments to play in the country. I think they're probably going to have to learn some SEC lessons before they right the ship.
I don't know, man. When you watch them play defense and the defensive stats that they've got on paper now through 12 games, you play defense, you got a chance to win. Yeah. Now on the road at Auburn, Auburn's ranked number 11. LSU's 16 now. So yeah, it's a one hell of a way to start the SEC slate. But I don't know. I don't think it's a no chance thing for LSU. They play really good defense. They can shoot the ball well. Don't turn it over. I'm going cliche on everybody here. They got a chance to spring the upset.
There's going to be so much talk and so much discussion about off the court stuff, I think, on this telecast between Bruce Pearl and Will Wade. And I've said it for 3 years, and it's just unbelievable. I don't know if there's value in the fact that Scott Woodward's father-in-law is Mark Emmert, or what, because we're waiting for either the NCAA to come out and say we're done with the investigation, no consequences on LSU when it comes into Will Wade and the basketball program, or they just are they going to wait and drop the bomb February 20th and ban LSU from postseason play and all for naught. This is going to be like the Auburn football team in the 90s that went undefeated but couldn't play in the championship game or bowl game. I'm just very nervous. We've got a long way to go to get to April, and that's the date you got to get to in order to make sure LSU can maximize its potential this year on the hardwood.
Well, and again, it's unfortunate, and there's no rhyme or reason, and they're not going to come out and say, "Hey, we'll let you know on such and such date." They're going to do what they want when they want. But I think if you're Will Wade and you're LSU, you just put your head down and you try to win as many basketball games as you can, and and if that comes out, then you deal with it. But you can't wait for it if you're Will Wade or the basketball staff or the team or the fans. I mean, just if all of a sudden there's an announcement, there's an announcement, but focus with what you can control, which is tonight on the road against a very good Auburn team, and then go from there.
All right. So, do you have a pick in tonight's game? Do you have a?
Wow. I'm gonna take the LSU Tigers in the 4 points.
You're gonna take LSU in 4. Okay.
Correct.
This is the question, right, Stephen? How will this offense respond when Auburn gets a big run? I don't think this team can shoot their way back into a game. I 100% agree, and certainly go 8 minutes without a basket like previous games will be something they can come back from on the road at Auburn. He's basically asking, can LSU play the same type of basketball that they have played to this point this season, which is dig themselves a hole and then get on a big run and come back and win the game. And obviously Auburn being one of the better teams in the country, currently ranked 11th, Will Wade throwing bouquets left and right at Bruce Pearl's Auburn squad. No, can they? I agree. They're struggling to find a guy that puts the biscuit in the basket when you need it. And they cannot, to me, get down big like they've done in the past. I agree.
Well, and I will say, Stephen, that's the longest question in the history of Sports Shorts Daily.
Yeah, ran out of room.
It's like filling up half my screen here at Court Street Cafe. But, no, that's a good point. And, Stephen's had his eye on the Tigers all year. He's very good at talking about college basketball, among other things. So, hey, it's going to be a fun one to watch. I know you're going to be at the game. I'll be in front of the TV for sure.
Sidney Terrio asking, going off on a little Saints talk here just for a quick sec. we might tie our bet with the Saints under 9 wins. What he means by that, Joel Davis and I, of course, from Sports Shorts Radio, Saturday mornings 10 to noon on 104.5. He and I had a bet before the seasons, over under 10 or more wins. He wins the bet, 8 or less, fewer wins. I win the bet. 9 is a push. The winner has to buy the other dinner for 2. You're going to guess at Doe's Eat Place on Government Street in Baton Rouge, all you can eat and drink. That loss to the Dolphins killed Joel Davis's opportunity to win out and win the bet.
Well, he can't win now. Yeah.
Yeah, but had they won out, had they beaten the Dolphins, then they, play Carolina. If you beat the Dolphins, you think you got Carolina as a win at home, and then you got to go on the road the last game to Atlanta. Joel had a chance, but with COVID, boom, shuts down that opportunity. Now the question becomes: can the Saints win their last 2 games in a row to get to 9 wins to get Joel off the hook for paying up on the bet?
Well, they're 7.5-point favorites this Sunday in the Dome. That game was moved from 12 noon to 3:25, one of them NFL flex things. And then they go to play the Falcons in Atlanta on Sunday, January 9th.
Will it be Matt Ryan's final game in Atlanta?
So, I mean, there's a lot of storylines. And then, will they get Hill and or Simeon back? Very unfair to Ian Book the other night, in my opinion. It's not a true reading on him. Although there was a funny meme that said if Brian Kelly can win football games with him at Notre Dame, imagine what he could do at LSU. But anyway, That's neither here nor there. But no, so yeah, Joel can't win. He's pulling for the push. How about that? He's pulling for the push.
By the way, Ian Book looked so bad. And again, I know he's running for his life and he didn't have the pieces and the offensive line was atrocious and all that kind of stuff. But it was so bad and he got beat up so much that I don't know if he can overcome it.
He might not. I mean, that was,
he's got.
They kept blaming that pick 6. By the way, the only Saints quarterback to not throw a pick 6 this year is Jameis Winston. Who would have said that in August? But on that pick 6, they kept saying the ball was tipped, and it was slightly tipped, but it was still a bad throw. It would have been a bad throw if it wasn't tipped. But no, we could talk about Ian Book another day. But yeah, I'm gonna have to. Maybe Buzzy sold him a COVID clause.
Yeah, I don't think Buzz is too busy playing golf and shooting deer.
72s.
If Hill and Simeon are out, do they go to Bortles?
No, you're going to go with Book because he's been there all year and he knows the plays and the system a little better, I would think. There were people calling for Bortles to come in the other night. And I'm like, I don't know the plays. I mean,
I think it was so bad in that second half, Tommy. I wouldn't have had a problem with Bortles coming in there and him just saying, "Hey, you run a 5-yard hook. Hey, you run a skinny post. Hey, and let's go."
Yeah, draw it up on the huddle like we did in the playground. Huh?
Yeah, let's just draw it up on the ground. All right. I want to talk John Madden for a minute.
Sure.
John Madden, I was thinking about him the other day, Tommy. I thought about him a lot in the last year or so because I'm like, man, we haven't really seen or heard from John Madden. I hope he's doing okay, health-wise. All indications, right, are that he died suddenly. It wasn't some long, drawn-out illness.
Yeah, that's what I know. And, I was somewhat of a Raider fan when he won the Super Bowl in the 70s because I was a Kenny Stabler fan. Luckily, I got to meet Stabler and work with him in the Arena 2 Football League and had drinks one night with Stabler in downtown Mobile. That's a story in itself. But John Madden, not only is a Super Bowl winner, but then the sportscaster. I think they invented the telestrator because of him. And then, and then, of course, the video games. He's, he made young kids learn more about the NFL through the video game. His impact on the game is immeasurable. One thing about John Madden I didn't know, Ronnie, he played college football and baseball. Was a catcher in baseball in college. He's like Skip Bertman. He was a catcher when he played college baseball. But you can't measure his impact on football, in particular the National Football League, and on broadcasting and on video games. Quite the man that really made. Yeah, he won a Super Bowl with the Raiders, but his mark on football, I think, is larger as a broadcaster and the development of the video games, which spurned hundreds of other video games. Wow, what a legend! And yeah, everything I read, it said he died unexpectedly at the age of 85, which would lend you to believe that he wasn't in any kind of health situation.
Quick little something on him as a football player. He grew up in California, went to Jefferson High School in Daly City, California. He played at Cal Poly University.
Went to Oregon first.
Okay, but they've got him listed on Wikipedia as Cal Poly. He ended up, he played one season at the College of San Mateo in 1954 before he was given a football scholarship at the University of Oregon. He studied pre-law played football with John Robinson, assistant coach at LSU, or an analyst for LSU. They were childhood friends, and he was given a football scholarship to Oregon with John Robinson. He redshirted because of a knee injury back then and had a knee operation. Then he attended the College of San Mateo in 1955. Then went to Grays Harbor College, playing in the fall of '56, before transferring to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, where he played both offense and defense for the Mustangs in '57 and '58. So he bounced around to 4 different schools back then, which was unheard of back then. 21st.
Hey, was he in the transfer portal?
he was a precursor to that. He was the 244th overall pick in the draft by the Philadelphia Eagles in '58, but in his first spring training, he suffered an injury to his knee, and that was it. John Madden, as I don't remember him much as a coach. I was born in '72. Of course, his coaching days were in the late '60s and the '70s with the Raiders. Robbie Mahfouz, who I know you know from your days over at Southeastern, was my offensive coordinator in high school at Menard High in Alexandria, and I graduated there in 1990. So the late '80s, I was playing. And Robbie loved Kenny Stabler, which made me love John Madden. And then, of course, John Madden came on the scene in the early '80s on TV, and so he was a superstar as a television analyst in the '80s. But then I also had an appreciation for him as a coach because I was a fan of football and would watch all the old films and heard the stories about Kenny Stabler and him and all that. And so always liked John Madden. But the interesting thing about John Madden that a lot of young people don't realize, young people meaning under the age of 40, one, he was afraid to fly. So he had the Madden Cruiser. He had the private bus.
His bus is in the Hall of Fame, by the way. That's the only bus in the Hall of Fame.
Is it really? That's pretty cool.
I got another cool story, but go ahead.
He never flew on the plane. He always took the bus everywhere. I mean, we're talking about it. One game's in San Diego, the next game's in Miami. Bam, he took the bus across the deal there. But I'll tell you a funny story. The Super Bowl was in Miami it was when the Falcons lost to John Elway and the Broncos. So that was 98, I believe. And 98, 99, something like that. And so I'm over there at the time working the Super Bowl, working for Leslie Visser, was there all week working for her. And she was good friends with John Madden. And we were scheduled to cover the Falcons, I think. I think we had to cover – I think we covered the NFC team that week. So we were wherever they were and interviewing them and stuff like that. And we went to John Madden's Super Bowl party. He literally whenever he – was covering the game. So in that point, whenever Fox was covering the game, he always threw a big Super Bowl party. Well, he ended up having he had the Cuban music playing, he had the cigar rollers there, the whole 9 yards. And he and I, side by side, were playing the bongos, and he was hammered, having a great time. And there was cameras in our face, and it ended up, how they had the 3-4 hour pregame show on, before the Super Bowl game. Well, they showed he and I playing the bongos on one of the clips, coming back from the break. Hey, let's take a look at John Madden's Super Bowl party earlier in the week, and it showed he and I playing the bongos and laughing and all that kind of stuff. And so I actually went on the bus, Tommy, a couple times over the years, and he was always very kind to me, and I mean, he's just a legend, a rock star in the industry.
Well, something else he did, a tie to Louisiana, Ronnie, and there was an article about this past Thanksgiving. That there's a store, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of the store. The guy somewhere in Southwest Louisiana that sent the turducken to him on a Thanksgiving broadcast. The turkey stuff with the duck, stuff with the chicken, and of course he made a big thing out of it. And they've since sold like 20 million turduckens since I think they shipped that free, hoping he'd say something about it. Which now you can never pull that off with sponsorships and all. But that article was in the Advocate around Thanksgiving time, just this past year. And I remember reading it. So people, you can go to the Advocate and search for that. But that another thing that he did that, there's so many things about John Madden. And I'm sure the NFL is going to name some award after him. And there's going to be something done, television. I mean, everybody's going to have a John Madden sticker on the back of the helmet this week. Or at this year's Super Bowl, there'll be some big tribute. memorial kind of thing. I would not be surprised to see that at all.
By the way, John Madden, survived by his wife, Virginia. They just celebrated their 62nd wedding anniversary, literally just a couple of days ago. So sad news. We all have to go some point in time. John Madden just was seen bigger than life. And, of course, most people nowadays under the age of 30 or so remember him for the video games. He retired in 2009. So it's been, 12 years or so since he did a game on TV.
And I remember Kenny Stabler telling me this about John Madden when he played for the Raiders. And they had tons of Pro Bowlers on the team. It was a great collection of football players. He said, John Madden didn't care what you did 6 days a week. All he cared about was when the ball was kicked off Sunday that you did what you were supposed to do. That was that. He was a player's coach, if you will, maybe before that term became a term. But I remember Stabler telling me that story. Like, he just did, he didn't care if you partied. He didn't care what you could. Madden was a big party. He didn't care. As long as when you showed up, you played football and did what you were supposed to do. Well, he won a Super Bowl with that theory.
Pat Summerall and John Madden, the greatest, duo as far as play-by-play and color in NFL football history, in my opinion. What do you think?
I agree 100%. Summerall was better than good. Madden put the word color into color commentary, and the fact that he was himself, boom, he'd say, look at that, guy goes here, got to go there. And I think, I'd have to look this up, I think they started the telestrator because of him, and he would draw the things, and he knew the game, obviously, and he entertained, people forget that ESPN, the E stands for entertainment. Well, that's what sportscasting's all about. So he entertained. People couldn't wait to watch a game. And if you knew if the Madden Cruiser was in town and Summerall and Madden, it was the biggest game of the week in the NFL.
By the way, Coach O, he'll be moving into the TV world.
Really?
He's got some offers. He'll be working that out this April. He actually had a little procedure on his throat, and he's got a little ankle thing. He's got a few little mini surgeries that he's got to do, I guess, this spring or whatever to get better. But my understanding is that he is not going to coach, and he's going to get into the TV world. Wow. He's going to be like an in-studio analyst type guy. Not an analyst at games, but like an in-studio guy. You can see him being a Tony Saragusa type, or he can be the guy that's demonstrating, how to shuck a block or how to do something, and just be that personality on a team of people. So we'll see where he ends up, ESPN, Fox, whatever, this spring, but this summer. But hey, $17 million plus another $500,000 million a year to go have fun doing that for as long as you can, while his boys are off coaching and doing that sort of thing, at different colleges, trying to start their career, and allows him to travel around and see them. I think that's the move he's going to make, and it's a smart one.
Yeah, I was unaware of that, but we'll see how it goes.
TK, tell us about what's going on over there at Court Street Cafe in Port Allen.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner, Court Street Cafe, just a couple of minutes over the Mississippi River Bridge. Obviously, I travel over here once a week at least. And, there's traffic, but there's no problem. Get over here with no problem. If you're in downtown Baton Rouge, you can get over here in 5 minutes, get breakfast, lunch, dinner. They got it going on here. Jason and the staff do a wonderful job. Connect on Facebook and Instagram with Court Street Cafe. They post the lunch specials, the dinner specials, steak night tomorrow night. If you're looking to get out and get a steak, you can do that at Court Street Cafe in Port Allen. Hopefully you can check it out real soon. I've had breakfast, I've had lunch, I've had dinner. Trust me, you need to come check it out.
He's Tommy. I'm Ronnie. We'll be back with more Sports Shorts Daily this coming Friday morning, 9 a.m. He'll be, like you said, over at Tremonti's. Until then, have a great one, everybody. Go Tigers tonight. I'll have a full report on what it's like on the plains. I'll be there tonight for LSU and Auburn basketball.
Are you gonna throw toilet paper on the trees?
I am. I am not.
Okay.
I'm not. If we get out of there with a win,
take LSU in 4. Take LSU in 4. There's a TK tip for you.
And my advice for tonight is get you a good pizza, get some beer, maybe a soda, and then just sit back and watch the game and enjoy it, and don't bet on it, because